You're watching Reality Check. Close to 2 years ago, some of India's leading human rights defenders, scholars and activists working in tribal areas were arrested for being part of a Maoist plot and even for trying to kill the Prime Minister, in a case widely seen as an attempt to punish critics of the ruling regime. Now a new report suggests that crucial evidence which the investigating agencies built the case against these activists may have been planted. Now, this is the Bhima Koregaon case, which, to remind ourselves, the trigger for which was the violence which erupted in 2017 in Maharashtra's Bhima Koregaon village in a Dalit upper caste clash on the anniversary of the Battle of Bhima Koregaon, symbolic of Dalit assertion. Scores of activists, including human rights lawyer Sudha Bharadwaj, the scholar Anand Teltumbre, tribal rights activist Stan Swamy, were picked up in batches, accused of inciting the violence and of being part of a wider Maoist plot. Now, the police case relied heavily on letters supposedly recovered from the laptops of these activists, especially that of the laptop of Rona Wilson, who has worked on political prisoners, as well as those accused in terror cases. Letters in which these activists allegedly discussed attacks on Indian soil, including on the Prime Minister. Evidence which the activists have denied as fabricated. It's now emerged that Wilson's lawyer sent Wilson's hard drive, which had been seized by the police, and a copy of which was provided to the lawyers by the police, to a US-based forensic firm, Arsenal Consulting. Arsenal's report, first reported by the Washington Post today, is a bombshell. In brief, it finds that Rona Wilson's laptop had been infiltrated by an attacker 2 years before the arrest, and that this attacker in that time had planted a number of documents, including at least 10 incriminating letters, just weeks before he was arrested. The identity of the attacker is not known. The US lab Arsenal describes this as one of the most serious cases of tampering. Based on their report, lawyers for Rona Wilson have moved the Bombay High Court asking for the case against him to be dropped. Okay, we've got a great panel, but let me start with my conversation earlier this evening with Mark Spencer, who's the president of Arsenal Consulting, who joined me from Boston. And I began by asking him to tell us a little bit about his firm and how you came to this data, this report. How did this all happen?
Arsenal is a digital forensics consulting firm founded in mid-2009. And we focus very specifically on electronic evidence. So whether that's identifying where electronic evidence may exist, going to preserve that evidence, analyzing it, and ultimately reporting on it, any or all of those things are what we're focused on. We were contacted in early 2020 about this case and possibly analyzing electronic evidence. We didn't get the electronic evidence until July. Once we had the first hard drive, which contained both forensic images and police work product on it, it didn't take us very long to figure out that something very bad had occurred.
Right. Essentially, what you seem to have found is that Rona Wilson's laptop had been infiltrated?
Right. So the timeline to us is fascinating. It's not something we've even heard of before. The laptop was initially compromised by NetWire, the NetWire remote access Trojan, June 13th, 2016. So the NetWire remote access Trojan is being controlled by the attacker as of that date. The hidden folder in which incriminating documents are placed was created November 3rd, 2016. Then the final document, at least as of what we are aware of, the top 10 incriminating documents, was placed into that folder on April 6th, 2018.
Right.
And then the laptop is seized shortly thereafter on April 17th. So it's really the incredible time span here not only in terms of a computer being compromised, that's not unusual for a computer to be compromised over a long period of time, but to have incriminating documents that are dropped over time onto a computer by something like the NetWire remote access Trojan, that is unprecedented. It's not something, like I said, we've heard of before.
You in fact say in your report that this is the most serious case of tampering you've seen.
Yes.
Okay, could you also just share with us, Mark, the modus operandi used by this attacker?
We have two versions of that exhibit attached to our report. One has what you might call the raw code. One is something more like Rona Wilson would have seen on his screen. But over the course of that particular day, you can see Rona Wilson's associate make multiple attempts at getting him to open this link and get this document. And you can see the entire conversation unfold throughout the day until finally Rona Wilson says to him, okay, I was successful. I got it opened, but I can only see the header of the document. The rest is gibberish. And that his opening that document started the chain of events, which resulted in the installation of the NetWire remote access Trojan, which was running an active multiple versions of the NetWire remote access Trojan from that point through its seizure by the police.
Right. And were you able to identify who this attacker was?
No, we are not going to be involved in attribution at this point in any way related to the identity of the attacker. What we can say confidently is it's very obvious that the goals were surveillance. We would say very aggressive surveillance and document delivery, more specifically incriminating document delivery.
Right.
And the attacker had extensive time and resources. I would say emphasis on time. It's really amazing how much time the attacker spent on Rona Wilson's computer.
Right. And Mark, last question to you. Would the authorities here be able to argue that this is not the original drive which they seized from Rona Wilson's laptop? They can turn around and say this could be any drive to which anything could have been done.
No. There's many ways to authenticate a piece of electronic evidence. So those include both things in the more physical world, like chain of custody documents, as well as electronic information such as hash values. So we based our work off of the forensic images that were obtained by the police, and they are in the exact same condition as when the police obtained them. So that's a very straightforward thing to deal with.
All right, Mark Spencer, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Okay, let's go across to panel. We're joined by Vrinda Grover, Advocate, Supreme Court. We have with us N. Venugopal, who's nephew of Varavara Rao, who's one of the accused in the case as well. Geeta Bhatt, political analyst, supports the RSS. But let me start with Joanna Slater, India Bureau Chief, The Washington Post. A fantastic scoop, Joanna Slater, for you and your team with this story. But I think another interesting aspect of your story was that you actually sent out the Arsenal report to a number of other forensic experts who vetted it and found it kosher?
Absolutely. So, as you noted, we, and that's myself and my colleague Neha Masi, we have been covering this case for 2.5 years. And like others, we've taken note of the concerns surrounding the authenticity of these letters in question. And today's story takes that much, much further, as you just discussed with Mark. And for us, one of the important things was we wanted to make sure that this report was credible. And so we sent it to a number of other experts in the United States to take a look. We also did a little bit of due diligence on Mark and his firm. And what we came back with was that they have a very good reputation. They do solid work. And I think they've demonstrated it in this report. Right.
Now, Vrinda Grover, this is a report which is based on Rona Wilson's laptop hard drive. but does it have implications for the whole case as such, including the other accused?
Absolutely. I think let's just go back to the history of this case. When the second round of activists were being arrested in August 2018, there was a PIL filed by Romila Thapar and other academics. And the prayer being sought from the Supreme Court was that we need a special investigating team because the kind of material, and at that time, the state was exclusively relying on these so-called letters, which were apparently seized from the device of Rona Wilson. And at that juncture, doubts were raised that this is not an independent investigation and there is planting taking place. In fact, there was a dissenting judgment by Justice Chandrachud agreeing with us that it required an independent investigation. What is the so-called incriminating evidence on the basis of which for over 2 years, people, some of the most senior human rights defenders of this country have been incarcerated, including very senior persons like Varva Rao and Stan Swamy in ill health, is on the basis of these so-called alleged letters, which are not documents. These are supposed to be on somebody's device. They are undated, they are unsigned. And because of the UAPA's bar, which has been read as being a bar on examining the material, the admissibility of the material, they are languishing in jail. And today this report, I have not read the report, I only have what is available, what has been put out by Washington Post. What is clear is that there is a very urgent need for reviewing the kind of evidence the prosecution is relying upon. There is no quarrel with the fact that these are people who have dissented from the present regime's way of governance.
And you're saying that's why this is something which requires to be looked at. Is this, Geeta Bhatt, a very damning revelation, especially because we saw how the BJP government in Maharashtra had doubled down on this when the government changed and the new Uddhav Thackeray-led government was planning to perhaps relook at this case. The centre immediately sent it off to the NIA. All of that now under a question mark, Geeta Bhatt.
Well, Srinivasanji, well, we just saw that, 6 hours ago, Washington Post has posted this story, and you were tracing it. I was listening to the person from the forensic digital firm who was speaking. Now, so he has given a certain information which he says that that his laptop or his hard disk, it was found that a certain malware was installed on it. So I'm very sure that with the kind of expert team that they must be having, they will definitely be in a position to actually give out the IP address from where this malware would have been installed in Rona Wilson's laptop.
No, but isn't that
so that there is a
regardless? One second, hold on. Regardless of who installed it, the fact that it was his laptop was compromised and letters planted. That is the most damning thing, is it not? Because it's the letters which form the basis of almost the entire case.
Srinivasanji, that definitely, if that is the case, you see, I mean, if there is a proof, if there is an evidence, that because you see, there are digital footprints which cannot be removed. Now, the malware was installed. If it is it that it was being used by Rona Wilson, or is it that it was being used by someone else?
No, by the attacker.
On his laptop is
according to Arsenal, the malware. According to Arsenal, the malware was being used by the attacker. Okay. N. Venugopal. N. Venugopal, what are the implications for your case as well, as in for the case of your uncle Varavara Rao? Are you also going to look at this report and consider it for your own case?
Yes, Srinivasan Jain, actually, this is a vindication of our stand for the last 2.5 years. When on June 6th, the first arrests were made of Rona Wilson, Surendra Godling, and Sudhir Davle and Shoma Sen. On that day itself, Pune police held a press conference and leaked 3 letters. in those letters, Varavarav's name was mentioned.
Yeah.
And on June 7th, 2.5 years ago,
Yeah.
Varavarav held a press conference. And in that press conference, he said, these are fabricated letters. Either they are tampered or doctored, but this is a cooked up evidence.
Right.
And after 2.5 years, we are proved it is a fabricated evidence.
Right.
And not only us, there are many forensic experts, many retired police officers, many journalists.
Yes.
Dissected those letters and said those letters were concocted.
Right, and now it appears, that there's further kind of bolstering of that claim that these letters may in fact have been fabricated. Yes.
Tampering. I have just read that 16-page report. It's a fantastic report.
Right.
We believe we are vindicated.
Joanna, now, we've been trying to get responses from the government. None has been really forthcoming, other than Devendra Fadnavis, former Chief Minister of Maharashtra, who says the evidence is still damning. He still stands by that. But I believe you managed to get some responses from the National Investigating Agency, which is probing the case.
Indeed. So I spoke with the spokeswoman for the NIA, and we posed a number of questions connected to the report. So what they said was two things. The first one was that they had conducted their own forensic analysis of this laptop, and that analysis showed no sign of malware on the laptop. I asked what search specifically was done for malware on the laptop, and I was not given a specific answer to that question. I was just pointed to the charge sheet. The NIA also said that they're not only relying on electronic evidence in this case, they also have some documentary evidence and some accounts by witnesses that they say are also very, serious accusations. Defense lawyers would point out that the witness accounts are not all sworn testimony, and none of them have been tested in court.
Right. Now, Vrinda, what do you make of that? Both the NIA stand that there's a whole lot of other evidence other than the letters, and also Devendra Fadnavis today was saying that, look, the evidence is strong, that's why these people have been rejected bail multiple times.
Okay, so I think there is the fundamental way in which the criminal justice system assumption works is that the investigation will be fair, not compromised, not malafide, and the state will not be actually fabricating evidence. The criminal justice system rests on that assumption. Today, that assumption stands challenged. Let us accept what the NIA is saying. NIA is saying that they have done their forensics. Here is an independent forensic report. Earlier, also from day one, doubt has been cast because the entire thrust of the prosecution was on these so-called alleged letters. Of course, the minute the state government changes in Maharashtra, for reasons unknown, the investigation was handed over to NIA, again a suspicious circumstance. If there are today two versions of forensic evidence, does it not warrant an independent probe? Can the criminal justice system proceed in a system where the state may have manipulated, fabricated evidence against those who are dissenting from the present regime? That is a minimal against which we cannot go. What is the IP address? What is the digital footprint? Let's have an independent probe of experts, not by the state. Let the court monitor it. This case warrants it.
Which is what
actually... So far as the bail is concerned.
Which is...
yes, the bail has been rejected because the UAPA is designed in a way that the court has to see whether prima facie what is placed before it is true. Today, prima facie, a very serious doubt has been cast. And therefore, what does need to be done is that these people need to be released on bail as a minimal, even as that independent probe is done.
Even as the independent probe goes on.
The faith of everybody will be shaken in the system.
In fact, Geeta Bhatt, I actually asked Mark that, I mean, not just in the interview, but otherwise also about the identity of the attacker. And he says that's something best left for the Indian government to probe, because they are not able to conclusively say who it could be. So they'd like that to be passed on to the Indian government. But Geeta Bhatt, I come back to it. The allegation throughout has been, we don't know who's done this, by the way, but the allegation has been from these activists that this is the work of the Indian state itself, that they themselves were planting evidence in order to frame these activists, because these activists were critics of the current government.
Well, the letters, which were found, they said that, if the present political dispensation continues to be in power, then it is going to be a very serious threat for the Maoist activities. And it is not just the letter, it has also been, if you actually look at the past history, specific to Rona Wilson.
But now it's emerged that these letters may have been planted, so I'm saying...
Last time also you stopped me.
Yes, yes. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Rona Wilson, he has also been, it has been stated that he was in close association with already jailed, G.N. Sai Baba, who was for Maoist activities. And not only that, in 2011, when it was a UPA government in power, in answering a question in the Rajya Sabha, it was stated by the MOS of Home Affairs that the organization which Rona Wilson represents, CPRR, and some other names which were stated, they are basically CPI Maoist extension, which was of course denied by Rona Wilson at that time. And in 2005, while he
my
was a
question
PhD
was on the
student,
letters.
at that time also, he was charged and accused and called and interrogated for his close association with S.A.R. Gilani.
Geeta ji,
So
I don't want to interrupt you because you get upset. My question was on the letters.
Who have been into activities which are definitely unlawful. So also history is also there. And
my question was on the letters. Now I have to move on because you've not. I'm sorry. Now I have to move on. No, Geeta ji, hold on. My question was on the letters. You didn't answer that, and I allowed you to speak regardless. Now I have to move on.
Given the IP address
Varavara Rao,
was installed,
Mr. Venugopal. Mr. Venugopal, realistically though, are you hopeful of any relief from the courts?
Given the arguments, how the arguments went on in Bombay High Court, we are hopeful of getting bail, at least conditional bail, because this was on medical grounds. And our advocates, Indra Jai Singh and Anand Grover, argued very well, and NIA could not give any tangible reason for rejecting the bail.
All right. Well, let's see how it plays out, because interestingly enough, what Mark Spencer says is that what they've put out is just the tip of the iceberg. They've received a huge tranche of data, and they said that there could be more coming out from these findings. Thank you so much for joining us on Reality Check. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have. Good night.